Welcome to the Rhinestone Podcast, where we journey through the extraordinary lives of music's brightest stars. I'm your host, Banner Driscoll, and today we're diving into the dynamic world of Simon Phillips. Simon Phillips is not just any drummer. He's a Grammy Award-nominated virtuoso whose drumming is renowned across the globe. Known for his technical brilliance and unmistakable musicality, Simon has carved out a legendary career that spans rock, fusion, and jazz. Whether laying down hard-hitting beats for rock icons or navigating the intricate rhythms of jazz fusion, Simon's drumming is defined by precision, power, and an undeniable emotional depth. Simon's musical journey began in the 70s and 80s working with some of the biggest names in rock, including Jeff Beck, Michael Schenker, Mike Oldfield, Judas Priest, and The Who. In 1992, he stepped into the spotlight with Toto, continuing to showcase his extraordinary talent until he left the band in 2014. But Simon's contributions extend beyond his work with these iconic bands. He also leads the fusion band Darwin, known for its innovative approach and complex compositions, and through his own project Protocol. Simon has explored the realms of progressive rock and jazz fusion, producing albums that highlight his skill as both a drummer and a composer. Join us as we explore the remarkable career of Simon Phillips, delving into the stories behind his iconic performances, his journey through different genres, and his indelible mark that he's left on the world of music. Simon Phillips, welcome to the Rhinestone Podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing fine on this lovely Saturday morning in California. Yep.
Well, Simon, in the 17 episodes we've done so far of the Rhinestone Podcast, we have not interviewed a drummer yet. And I'm so happy that we get to interview you at number one for our drums, because you're someone I love, and it's so fun going through your discography of records you've been on. And I just realized like how many classic records that you've been on that I had no idea that you were on. And I am really interested because I play guitar mostly. And when I play guitar, I'm always thinking in terms of how am I interlocking with the drums? And for me, it's always about trying to keep up with the snare, keep up with the bass drum, and try to match the energy that the drummer is doing. And so what I'm curious about for you is, what are some of the more important elements to you when you are getting a drum mix, whether that's live or in the studio? Is there certain things you're looking for? Are you looking to interlock with the bass, the singer? How does it work for you when you're thinking of a drum mix?
When you say a drum mix, do you mean mixing a track with all the instruments, or do you mean recording the drums?
Well, we can go either way. So I mean, as far as when you're, let's say live, let's go live first. When you're going live, what are you listening for? Is there musts that you have to have when you are getting a drum mix? So let's say you're playing, an arena, or you're playing a club or something like that. When you get the drum mix, or what are the must-haves for you in that regard?
The most important thing is to be able to hear the other people on the stage. And the next, well, together with that, to hear them in time. So, when you play a very large stage, let's say, I don't know, 60 feet wide stage, and people are positioned quite far away from you, you've got two problems. One, can you hear them? And also, you're most likely going to be hearing them a little bit late. So, if you imagine, sound travels very slowly, and depends on the thickness of the air. You're about a millisecond per foot. So if somebody is rough figures, it's not exact. If somebody's 20 feet away from you, and you can hear them because they're playing through, a large guitar, speaker cabinet, and amplifier, you are actually probably going to hear them 20 milliseconds late. And then you've got the confusing one, which is you're hearing them bouncing off the walls, and then if the PA's on, you're hearing the PA being reflected off the back wall, which is going to be much, much later than that. So it's actually cacophonous, the sound. So, and that's why, stage monitors were invented, and that's why we use stage monitors, because we want to hear the precise time that somebody is playing. That's very, very important. So that would be my first requirement. I have mixed my own monitors since 1984. I got tired of basically trying to play and twisting around to try and find my my drum tech or roadie in those days, to ask him to turn down the guitar or turn up the keyboards or something, and then he has to walk from behind the drums all the way to stage left or stage right, where depending where the monitor desk is, and tell the guy, oh, less keyboards, more keyboards in the drum monitors. And by the time he's actually done that, I played for 24 bars with excruciating Moog synthesizer solo going on, trying to keep out of the way of the monitors. It just drove me nuts. And working with Mike Oldfield, he had designed a monitor system where each musician had a little box of 10 faders, and they could control their own monitors. It was a wonderful system. I'd never seen it before. And we're talking about 1983, by the way. This is groundbreaking. Nobody was doing that back then, as far as I know, because anything that would do that would have to be custom built. So that when we started playing live with Mike, that was the first time I'd experienced that. I went, wow, this is great. Well, wonderful. You know, one fader drums, one fader bass, guitar one, guitar two, keyboards. I mean, it was a wonderful scenario. So being fairly technically minded and, you know, with all this equipment, I figured out a way of being able to do this every time I played. And I've been doing it ever since. So if I'm playing, somebody's too loud, I can just go blink like that, and it's done. Absolutely wonderful. So that's a very important thing for me, is to have control over the stage level. I can't move. A drummer cannot move. You're stuck. If something's blaring away at you, you're getting hit. Anybody else on stage, apart from maybe the keyboard player, he is a little bit stuck too. You can walk away from your monitor if it's too loud, and then scream at the monitor guy. You could even go up to him, especially if you're wireless too. But for drummers, it's a little different. So the first requirement is to be able to hear everybody, and the people that you can't hear, I want to put them in my monitors.
What do you mean by that? The people you can't hear? Like, give me an example of that.
Well, if there's a singer, a background singer who's 20 feet away from you or up on a riser behind you, you're not going to hear them. Not at a stage level approaching 100 decibels. No, you're not going to hear them. The back of the PA, just even the background noise of the PA is going to be around 90 decibels. That's just a cacophony, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to get above that. And this is where you have to be very, very careful too. With the Who, Roger Daltrey's monitors, which were flown in the rigging above the light rigging, 2 huge monitors on stage, 103 decibels. It was stunned.
That's so loud.
Oh yeah. Now, of course, that means speakers are very, very directional. So you would have to stand in that spot, and your dB meter would do that. As soon as you stand away, it's going to decrease a little bit, So you got to be careful. So that was another reason for doing my own monitors, was to have control. If everything started getting too loud and crazy, I could grab those faders, the master faders, and pull them down. At least get rid of my noise, the noise that's going on. If it was really bad, and you just keep playing. I mean, that's like in case of emergency, break glass. In case of emergency, pull the master faders down. It's also very interesting, which I do sometimes. If it's I want to hear really what's going on without monitors. So sometimes I just pull the faders down. I'm okay, that's interesting, and then I'll push the faders back up. And obviously when I can get a moment to do it, if I'm playing, it's it takes a lot of sorting out to play live, and from a sonic point of view, and your brain has to get used to the sound. in order to translate it. And the way I can, how many times have you been to a concert where the band comes on and it starts, and the first couple of songs are like, and you say, somebody asks you after the show, so what was the sound like? Well, but yeah, by about the third song, it was really good.
Yeah, dozens of times.
Right? It was not the case at all. It was great from the start. The problem was your brain. You are still trying to figure out what the hell's going on, because you're 50 feet in front of the PA, which means you're right, usually in a big place. Typically, the console, front of house console, would be 100 feet away from the PA. So now, which means he's hearing it 100 milliseconds late. And if you've got delay towers, oh boy, then it gets very confusing. So the brain, you've maybe you saw the warm-up band, or if there wasn't a support act, you're going in cold into this arena which has all sorts of ridiculous acoustics going on. No wonder it doesn't sound great for the first 2 or 3 songs. But we did a sound check, and we have hopefully a really good not only sound engineer but systems engineer. And on our big PA system, you have a systems engineer. He's the guy that actually calibrates and sets up the PA to make sure that it sounds good in this room. So no, we've done our job. We're sounding fine from the beginning. It's your brain as the audience has to adapt to what's going on, and it figures it out very quickly. We have the same situation on stage, by the way. And I think this was really explained to me during the Who tour in '89. Most of the concerts we played were outdoor stadiums, ranging from around 60,000 at Giants in New York to 74,000 in Boston, to like 83,000, I think, at Dodgers. In Los Angeles.
The Angels Stadium.
The what?
Angels Stadium.
It was. Oh gosh, I can't remember because I'm not from the States. I don't know all my football teams, But anyway, the big stadium in California, whatever, in Los Angeles, it's about 80,000, I think. Obviously, it depends how you set up, where you put the stage, But I think our show there was about 80. So the first few shows is like, wow, you really have to get used to the kind of sound because, in a way, it's actually very dry on stage because it's open air. Okay, you'll have a cover which will reflect some sound, but compared to playing indoors, it's actually there's less irregularities, there's less sound bouncing off surfaces. But what you have is, because it's a big place, you've got delay towers, and you hear the reflection from the back bleachers coming back to stage. And I joke that it's a bit like everything you play sounds like a shuffle, because when you're playing boom, ba, you're hearing boom, chi, ba, chi, boom, chi, ba. It's so weird, and you have to get used to that. Even if you've got 60, 70,000 people there, you're still going to hear that because you've got a set of loud PA speakers halfway down the stadium. So the people at the back can hear, and also that it's their time specially. So at least you're hearing, kind of in sync. I mean, obviously we're going like, and then you're hearing, ba, that's the time delay. It's amazing. That's why when you watch a video, when you watch, analog video, back in those days when we had cameras and a projector, we didn't have before we had the big Trinitron digital screens, it was pretty much instant, which means at the back, you'll see the drummer playing, but you're hearing, boom, boom, boom. It's, the sound's delayed, right? Now with digital, of course, there's latency, and especially with screens. So if you're in the front row, and you look up at the screen, it's late. So when I'm on stage and playing, I look up one of the screens if I can see it. If it's behind me a little bit, I can't watch it because I've already done that. And then I see my hands do that. And I go, whoa, can't play to that.
It's
So
like,
it's very complex. But I would say it takes maybe 2 gigs, 3 gigs, and then it becomes normal. And it's a bit like playing just a normal venue. You don't notice the size anymore because your brain has had now a chance to adapt. Then we went indoors. I think it was Cobo Hall in Detroit. Oh my God, it was the most horrific sound because we weren't used to all the complex reflections coming off the building. I mean, it was almost impossible to play. It was so confusing. I remember Roger was going, God, it sounds awful in here. And no, it didn't sound awful in there. Had we been playing arenas indoors for the whole tour, it would have sounded normal. Do you see what I mean? The brain has to adapt. That's exactly what it is. And that's maybe the difficult thing about playing live. And you know what? It's the same in a small jazz club too. It's so dry, and things sound small, and you've got to try to kind of get over that, and that just takes experience. So they're the problems that you're up against. But again, the most important thing is to try to get a good balance of all the musicians on stage, and so you can all play together, because groove is the most important thing. Time and groove. You want to go and see a band that feels really good,
and so it's essential to you that you hear everything on stage.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I don't want anybody doing something on stage that I don't hear, because that might affect the way I play.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. I guess I never really thought about how complex some of those big shows were as far as like the speaker placement and things like that. I mean, it's just wild that that is such a art form, and I guess it gives you a little bit more respect to the sound engineers and the systems engineers, like you mentioned.
Oh yeah, I mean, one of the problems today, we now use a PA system called a line array. It's much, much smaller, incredibly powerful, and very high quality, and takes up a third of the space that an old-fashioned PA used to take. However, they're quite small cabinets. I mean, most of the cabinets are really not that much bigger than that, really, depending if it's L Acoustic or D&B or Mayer. But you have subs, and these are bigger cabinets, and there's many ways to set the subs up, and different systems engineers do different things. On a big stage, often you put the subs one behind each other, like in a big long line, and they're cardioid. Other people set them up a little differently along the front. It really depends on the design of the PA. But one of the problems that's happening now, which we never used to have, was if you're set up stage center, you have an incredible bass bump on that part of the stage, which if you move to the side, you wouldn't get. And that's one of the biggest issues I think I've had. I remember, kind of the later years with Toto. I'd go out and I'd go, man, you got to turn the subs down. It's just they're so powerful. And I discovered that, I was told, I said, well, that's because you're stage center now. Whereas we used to set up where I was a little bit more stage left. But on this particular tour, stage center, and it's just, that's where all the bass just sums up, all the subs. So the systems engineer has to then come up with a very crafty way of trying to reduce center build-up on the subs, but not reduce it out front. So there's all sorts of stuff they can do. We can flip the phase of maybe some of the cabinets. I mean, it's very complex, and that's way out of I'm not a PA guy, it's very technical. But that's kind of one of the problems with modern PAs on a bigger stage or a bigger venue, is that center build-up of sub, which would also affect the lead singer of the band, if he's stage center, So it's usually sound checks, we're actually sorting out that kind of stuff. obviously that we can hear everything properly, but more when the PA's up and you have to ask the sound engineer to crank the PA. We want to hear it at its loudest so we can really get the effect. But of course, you're in an empty hall, so you know what I mean? The goalposts are always moving. But that's one of the kind of phenomenon of modern touring and modern using modern PAs and the way, as opposed to back in, even the 90s and 80s, definitely, when pretty much everything was flown. Huge, big cabinets with the Who. We used Clare Brothers. We used Clare Brothers S4 cabs and the subs, which were flown too, actually. Now, we may have had some on the ground. I never got a chance to even see. I mean, I didn't even meet half the crew on that tour. We had so many people on it. It was ridiculous. So, oh yeah, these big tours. You got people that you never see until you'll get a day off somewhere. And you go, who are these people saying hello to me? Oh, that's your stage crew. They set up the stage the day before you get there. Oh, wow. That's why you never see them. They're asleep. Yeah, it's funny.
So then, how about recording? How important is the drum mix to you when you're recording? Because you do a ton of session work, and I mean, obviously, like with recording, you're going to get different levels of completion to a song where the drums come in. Sometimes it's in the beginning, sometimes it's at the end. When you are getting tracks for recording, are you do you care as far as like what is in what? I guess what I'm saying is like, when you're listening to music and playing along, what is the most, are you like, because I know some drummers, they want to lock in with the bass. I know other drummers that want to lock in with the singer. Does it matter to you at all? Or is it just like, you want to hear everything? You want to hear as much sonic information as possible?
You need to lock in with everybody, not just the bass player, or the guitar player, or the singer. You've got to lock in to the whole mix of all the instruments that you have to play with. That's why. If you're playing live in the studio, and the only thing that you'll be generating is probably a click, maybe there might be some MIDI keyboards that you're going to play along to. That's just purely for ideas of what may be overdubbed later, but generally it would just be a click. So you need to blend in with everybody. But the most important thing, really, when recording, is the sound. That meaning the sound of each instrument, and that's what you have to take time with. So, so when you're playing live, you've got to make sure that, obviously you've done a sound check, you've got sounds, you've done changed a few things, but now you've got a basic good drum sound for the track. Okay, then you get your bass sound, then you get your keyboards. Okay, what's the keyboard player playing on this? Is he going to play Rhodes? Is he going to play acoustic? Depends on the song. And then the guitar player needs to figure out what he's going to play and what kind of sound he's going to, which amp he's going to use, which guitar, and then we'll start to play. We'll build up a mix. The engineer will build up a mix in your phones, or you can mix yourself depending on what the system is that is available at the studio. But the most important thing is that the sound of each instrument is doing this. It's like a big jigsaw. So you know that, wow, yes, it's gelling, and then you'll maybe do a take. I typically, even if we don't even know the song, I want to get into the control room straight away and listen to what's happening. So we'll do a take. I say, hey guys, I know it's rough. That's fine. Let's go and check out, make sure we've got the right sounds. And then you'll listen. And I'll go, not the right snare drum for this track. So I'll, if I'm engineering, then I tell myself that I'm going to change my snare drum. If I'm working with an engineer, I'm going to tell him, I'm going to change the snare. And I'll go, the bass, nah. The bass is a little pudgy. It needs to have more clarity on it. And the bass player goes, oh, let me use this bass. We've got round wounds on it, And then I'll go, the guitar sound, yeah, the guitar's actually nice. Keys, yeah. maybe acoustic's not right for this. Maybe you should play Rhodes or Wurlitzer or organ. Okay, great. We'll get that up. So those are the first little changes you're going to make. Hopefully, if it's a vocal song, hopefully you have a singer there. That's really handy, because I hate laying tracks without hearing a singer to know what we're supposed to be playing. That's really important. Now, generally, just stick them in a ISO booth, put a microphone up, and a windscreen, and a pop shield, and a bit of compression. Just get a workable sound, maybe a little verb, so he's comfortable and we can all hear him. That's all that. That's very, very important. And then we go out again. I change my snare and or tune it differently. Hit it a few times. How's that sounding? Yeah, I think that's going to be good. He'll probably have to change the gain because it's a different drum. So even by changing one drum, the snare drum, I can change the way that kit sounds. Also the way I play it too, where I play the drum kit. But that's getting now into a slightly different area as how to play the song. And then the bass player is now, oh yeah, no, that sounds good, great, okay. Now let's do another take. And we do the take, and we go in again. And how's that sounding? Yeah, that sounds great. I think we're good. All right, now let's go for a take. That's how it works for me. Everything has to be tailor-made for that particular song. And then you hopefully get a great take. And you might have to do a couple of takes. You might, if it's live, often I might go, wow, the beginning of this take was really good, but the end part wasn't so good. Let's go back to the take before and we listen to it. Great, let's edit between that take and this take. Great, easy. I mean, we have a click these days, but back in the 70s, we didn't have a click. And we still used to do that. We used to edit between takes. And I'll still do that if because, if you've got good musicians, time's going to be there. It's not going to, it works. I've done that so many times because that comes from the classical thing. A lot of classical music that you hear never played the way you hear it. They don't do it, the whole thing. They do it in sections. And they'll do different takes of different section. And then they'll take that, and there's a guy, usually the producer of a classical session who's writing down, first movement, take 3. Everybody agreed that was good. And then you have what we call an EDL, is an edit list, and you give it to the classical editing engineer, and he or she will put it together. And of course, it's like making a movie. The public never knows. They think it's the whole orchestra has been there for 20 minutes playing away. No, it doesn't work like that, unless it's a live performance, So I use that concept in rock and roll and jazz and the kind of commercial music, let's say. Why not? The most important thing is to get the best performance and the best vibe and groove of the song.
So as far as your own music, whether it be with Darwin or with Protocol, I can tell sound is very important to you, and specifically like how things sound and the meshing of the different sounds together. However, does that affect are you thinking about that when you're composing music for Darwin or Protocol? Like, are you thinking in terms of like the sound first, or is it the music first, or how does your compositional process like for those projects where you're the one in charge, where you're the one calling the shots?
Right. Well, usually composition is composition. I don't, the sonic, getting the sounds in the studio will come, it's pretty obvious when you have a type of song. I kind of know what kind of sound we want, but composition is purely composition, and I just stick to that. I make demos, but I try to make them not too good, because there's a problem of, like with Toto, they hated I love doing demos. They hated doing demos because often the demo, there's just something about it, there's a magic about it that you can never recapture. So best don't do it in the first place, right? Which is a very valid concept. But, which I learned very early on, actually, the first album I did with Toto, Tamboo, I had done demos to the songs that I composed or co-composed. And there's this one particular tune, Steve Lukather came over to Mike Porcara's studio, which I was working out of at that time. And he laid down a whole bunch of guitars, and we're doing the track, and he said, I've already played this. Let's use the demo guitars. And I looked at Elliot Shiner, who's the engineer, and I said, yeah, but we did that on ADAT, that's 16-bit 44.1. Huh? Cheap, recording material. No. He said, yes, but fine. So I had to go in the car, drive all the way over from Capitol Records, Capitol Studios to the Valley, to Mike's studio, take an ADAT out of the rack, cables, and the tapes as well. They were VHS. Plonk it in the car, drive back to Capitol. Meanwhile, everybody's sitting around doing nothing. And I'd walk in with this thing and go, sorry, Elliot, but that's what he wants to do. And he's like going, okay. So we connected up and we dumped those guitars. I'd done it to a click anyway. You dump them onto the machine we were using, which is God, what was it called? 3348 is the Sony Dash machine, 48 track on half-inch digital, which was 48K. It was still 16-bit. I think it was 16-bit in those days. Yeah, I don't think we've gone 24-bit yet. But much more high quality, of course. And so we dumped Luke's guitars. He didn't want to play them again. And, on the record, you can't tell. They're fine. Elliot had to kind of work a little bit. I'd engineered the original guitars. I mean, we didn't spend too much time on it, but it was okay, So the demo scenario, I love to make demos because I really like to. It's a way of displaying to everybody how the track's going to sound, how the composition's going to sound. Often I'll throw down some live drums, but real quick. I might, if I got a sound in mind, I might go for that sound a little bit just to kind of so I don't forget what the concept was. But like I say, I try to make a few mistakes, which is inevitable because I don't know the song yet. I haven't played the song. I've written it, but that's very different to sitting down and playing it. It's like playing someone else's song. It's interesting. But don't make it too good because otherwise you're going to be stuck in the scenario of, shit, we didn't quite capture the video, the demo vibe on the real take. But the thing to remember, and this is again the production, we're the only people that know that. I made the demo, especially my music. I do keyboards and drums basically. Sometimes I do machine drums actually, just because I don't need to really go out and play. I might as well this is fine, just as something to hear the song, But you have to remember the public never hears that. They only hear the final version. And many times I've thought there was just something on that demo or even an alternate take that we decided not to use but go for another take. There was something about that alternate take that was, wow, that was really cool. But you have to make decisions. But you have to remember the audience, the public, will never hear that other take. Unless, of course, it's released on another album, re-release, like a lot of people are doing these days. They only hear the final one that you've decided. So the thing is, don't worry too much about it. I think that's a production decision that you have to make. But yeah, I make very detailed demos. I try to copy the guitar player with my fake guitar sound, and then
so you're using MIDI sounds. Then you're using MIDI or VSTs, really? So you're not playing guitar or anything like that?
Oh, I can't. No. Guitar in my hands is deadly. No, that'd be horrible. Well, each finger presses two strings at once. I can't get between the.
Really?
Oh yeah, I'm terrible. I can't play guitar. I mean, I've been known to play some simple stuff on a bass when I've had to add in like another bass part or something. I go, okay, and I edit the shit out of it. I mean, to make it sound professional, But that's only like in emergencies, So all I do, even these days, I don't even use MIDI. It's all virtual instruments powered by USB cable, you know. Um, and I can select sounds. I do a lot of sound design too in the final mix. Sometimes I go, we're missing a brassy sound. We don't have it. So that's when I start getting into, the various, all these amazing plugins now. Arturia, for example. I mean, it's got some amazing stuff. And their recreation of some of the old synthesizers, which I used to use, Synclavier, the Fairlight, I used to program both of those. I wouldn't even know how to switch them on now, but they probably wouldn't even switch on anyway because they're broken, and it's like an old DAT machine. You're just lucky if it plays anything, in order to get one DAT machine to work, you need to buy 3 so you can braid the other ones apart. That's actually the second one. I had to find one for a mastering session because they only had it on DAT. And it worked for long enough just to get it into Pro Tools, and then it just stopped working. It's just, I don't know.
It served its purpose. Its purpose.
All digital equipment just doesn't stand the test of time. Analog equipment does. I mean, it might need a little bit of tender loving care, and a few repairs here, but as long as you can get the parts, they work. It's great. But digital, doesn't have a good lifespan. We're going to find that out in a few years. We're going to find out how much stuff we're going to be losing. It's a bit of a shame. But anyway, that's another issue. The composition, and composition comes in many ways. For protocol, because I'm the sole writer, mostly. Sometimes I do a co-write. Often it's melody first. I come up with a melody, and that's what I lay down first, just a little part of a melody. Then I harmonize around it and figure out what kind of form the song's going to take. It's instrumental, so it's very, very important that the melody be, strong. And a few I throw out, but occasionally I'm lucky. I go, oh, I could be making breakfast or in the shower. And if that happens, I've got to keep singing it because I'll forget it, With the Darwin project, we have 3 writers. Darwin is the guy that usually starts the song off because it's his project, really. And he'll throw a whole bunch of ideas, and then he sends it to me and Matt Bissonette. Matt, who's our singer and main lyric writer, and main melody too, because he's singing. He'll put stuff down, and then I get basically all these ideas, and then I have to wade through it and go, yes, no, yes, no. I do a whole big edit thing, like take out that section's not necessary. It's why are we doing that section? Let's get rid of that. I like this section though. Let's butt that up against there, and that's kind of how it starts. And then I put it all into MIDI information because Darwin just plays it straight down onto a kind of digital tape machine. Nothing separated. It just sends me this multi-track, but it's a stereo mix. That's it. So I have to figure out what's the bass playing, what's the guitar playing, if he's playing piano, what's the piano playing, and I recreate it all in MIDI, so I can then work with it, and it's all in time too. That's the other thing. I can say, right, I'm going to take that section and repeat it, or halve that section, or maybe these chords should be different. What if we actually change these chords here? So I'll rearrange it. It's basically arranging, and then I'll go, I just got rid of all those other bits because I didn't think they were really poignant to the song. We need a new section. And I'll just come up with a new section. I go, oh, hang on, let's go there. And that's how that part of the song gets. So by the time I've done my demo and send it back to Darwin and Matt, they go, oh, wow. Wow, I love that new bit. We should make that more, that, and then we go backwards and forwards until we get our demo. And then that's what we work off in the studio.
And then at what point do you start bringing in, like on the last Darwin record, you had Greg Howe and Mohini Day play on, who are two of my favorites. In fact, we had Greg on the podcast. Greg is one of our first.
Yes. Yeah.
Greg is the man. I love Greg. Greg is
Yeah.
the dude. But like, at what point do you bring them in, and do you like do you have them stick as close as possible to the demos? Are they allowed creative freedom? How does that work as far as their process?
So Mohini is in the tracking process. So when we track, it's Darwin, myself, Mohini. Again, my thing about all productions I do, if it's possible, I try to get the nucleus of the band to play everything, because one of the things that's happening today that didn't used to happen back in the day is, you want to know how many sessions I get set at 120 beats per minute?
How many, Simon?
Most of them. It's like, does anybody know how to change the tempo in Pro Tools or Logic? No, it happens quite a lot, but obviously, thankfully, there's lots of different tempos as well. But here's the problem. A sequencer will play anything at any tempo perfectly. The human does not. And many times I'll get some audio files and I'll throw them into Pro Tools. I'll look at how they've been recorded and might have to spend an hour or two fixing them, because the gain structure's all over the place. This track is really quiet here and then suddenly loud and then quiet, you can't play to that. I mean, so I have to go and click gain them all down, make sure I've got a good gain structure within the session. So, the output meters are not like this.
Yeah.
All that.
Although that sounds getting more popular, man. People are pushing more and more into the red, the loudness wars.
Well, thankfully, actually, yes and no. Go back 10 years, I would agree with you. Nowadays, it doesn't really matter anymore because radio, I mean, unless you're in that area of pop,
Yes.
But no, I started on analog as an engineer. So yes, all our levels are much higher than they were. All our mixes have way too much bass on them, but that's just the way it is, compared to doing a mix in the 70s or the 80s. It was very, very different, So anyway, but once I get that and I set up a headphone mix, got my drum tracks all imported into the session, they're all in input or, ready, and I go out and put the headphones and I start playing the track. I might have done a chart, it depends how complex the song is. And I'm noticing this is not comfortable. I'm like ahead or behind the click. I'm moving about all over the place. This groove this is not at the right tempo for this song. And so I'll go in and I can do a thing, which is, luckily we can do this now. We can actually do expansion and contraction with audio files in X form. And you just put everything to ticks, and you put in a different tempo, which might be maybe 2 beats per minute faster or slower. And you have to wait a little bit for it to do its thing, and then go out and go, oh yeah, that's better. Now I'm with the click. I'm not going all over the place. This song needs to be at this tempo. So now then I have to make a call or an email, depending where the artist is, and say, look, in my opinion, this tune is not at the right tempo. I'm really having trouble playing it, and it just doesn't feel good. All these instruments that I'm hearing, are these final? And am I the last person on? Or are you going to be redoing instruments? In the case of most of them, actually say, oh, no, we're going to redo all those. Great. You mind if I cut this at a different tempo? No, go ahead. That's fantastic. Because didn't even think about it, because the sequencer plays it back perfectly, but you're not 3 or 4 musicians in the same room playing together. That's a whole different thing. That's a little sad about today's music. Now, in many cases, I can't change the tempo because a lot of the instruments have already been recorded, because they've sent out the track to Billy Sheehan, they've sent it out to Greg Howe, they've sent it out to Derek Sherinian, and now I'm the last person on. So I just have to make it work. Luckily, it doesn't happen too often, which is good. because hopefully maybe the artist was a guitar player and he started off the song by playing a rhythm part. Feels good, and they put a click on or they put a drum pattern on, and it works. So, but it is an issue with today's recording, and that's why I like to record when I've got people in the room, and my demo even may not be at the right tempo. Often we played along pretty much to my demo with the drums muted, the bass muted, the guitar muted, but the keyboards are still in there. And I'm playing, and then we go and listen. I go, guys, this sounds a bit slow to me. Let's up this a couple of beats per minute. So we do the same thing. If it's all MIDI, it's going to change anyway. We find the tempo that works for that song. So it's great to have Mahini there, great to have Darwin there while we're tracking. That's very, very important. Once we've got our track, then I come back to here and I start making stems. Stems are basically a big Pro Tool sessions with 24 tracks of drums, 2 tracks of bass, 2 or 3 tracks of guitar, plus all the keyboards. That's a lot of stuff to upload, especially at 96K. So what I do what I call a stem session. So I bounce the kit down to 2 tracks, just 1 track of bass, bounce the keyboards down, depending on what parts they're playing. So then my session's much smaller. So instead of being 5-6 gigabytes, it's 1.2 or 2 gigs. That's much easier to upload. And I send it to Greg. I send it to either Derek Sherinian or Julian Pollack, who's the other keyboard player. Or I send it to someone else. One of the guys that plays a lot of the guitars, acoustic guitars and other stuff, Jesse Siebenberg, who lives here. Actually, he's a wonderful musician. He sings, he plays drums, he plays everything actually. So I'll send him a session, and then they do their parts. I get them all back. I import them into my master session, and we listen to them and go, yeah, that's great. That's how it works. All done in this room, by the way. Oh yeah, yeah.
Now, what about your? You must be going through a bunch of data for all that stuff. Do you have like a massive like drive for everything? I mean, if you're going through all those stems, 24 track at 96K is a lot of data, for drums and stuff like that.
Well, not these days. It isn't. It used to be. We used to have to, with Pro Tools, you used to have to use 2 FireWire 800 drives to record one session, and it would be called round robin. It would just throw audio files on either of the drives. Mm-hmm. So you got a tune that's scattered across 2 drives. That was an issue. Luckily it worked as long as you connect them both up. But it's kind of, for storage, is a little bit awkward, backups and stuff like that. Nowadays we have fast drives. I still use mechanical drives actually, and I think they're 4 terabytes.
Okay,
they're 4 terabyte drives, and I got 4 of them. So
oh wow, so yeah, you're fine.
Oh yeah. These days, the way that Pro Tools work. I'm a Pro Tools guy, not Logic. Pro Tools. Although I used to use Logic, and it's wonderful for certain things. But
yeah,
being an old-fashioned engineer, growing up with a tape machine and a console, Pro Tools is more that environment. So I started on it, so just stuck to it, and it sounds really good now. We have wonderful sounding. The way they build their software sounds great. No latency with an HDX card, which is a really important thing when you're recording. So disk usage is not so much of an issue now. But the other problem is that most of these songs end up at like 23, 24 gigabytes.
Wow.
with all the vocals and all the outtakes, and so
I guess that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I do that's what I call my master session or tracking session. Then what I do kind of a redux where I get I do a pare down of all the audio files. I only use the ones that are necessary. I've got the other takes should I ever need to go back to them, but basically I'll just end up with one playlist of drums. I don't keep all the other playlists. That's a lot of data, So then I save that as a separate session, and now suddenly from 20, 30 gigabytes, we're down to 5 gigabytes. That makes it a little more manageable in terms of saving and backing up, but also a little safer. Again, you see, when I started using Pro Tools, we had things as session corruption. This used to happen. Very rarely happens these days, although I've actually seen some weird things happen on different systems. My system is pretty solid. A couple of little things still happen, but this is always the way with a computer. I mean, there's going to be little issues here and there. But I'm very, when I get into that mode of doing cleaning up sessions and miniaturizing them, as it were, or condensing them, I label every single audio file. So and this just goes back from bad experiences of in the early 2000s, the 99, 2000, with mix system and then the first HD systems. So we're talking about Pro Tools 4, 5, 6, I think. Occasionally, you get a corrupt session, you have to rebuild the session. And now I know where to look for my files because I've labeled them all with the song name. So if the song starts with the word letter A after right at the top, they're all going to be at the top of the drive. I can just grab them, import them into a brand new session, easy. It takes a little bit of time, but I'm pretty what's the word? What do you call that when you're very particular? No.
Specific?
Huh?
Specific,
maybe. Yeah. There's a word. Well, I could use the word anal.
Sure, that's fine.
A little bit anal about that stuff, but I don't want shit going wrong, basically.
Yeah.
So it's it's a very different environment to when we had reels of tape. So I do try to keep it very much in that very analog world, just in case something happens. That's all. Yeah.
You heard it here. You got to label your stems. I always tell artists that. It gets so out of hand real quick if you're not on top of it. And like you said, computers can be futile sometimes. So it just, you heard it here. How are you choosing your projects these days? And how have you, because you've worked with all sorts of people, you've toured, you've recorded with, what draws you to a certain project to work
on? Right. So it depends in what capacity I'm going to be working as. So I do a lot of recording. I hardly ever go out on the road now. At my age, I'm very happy not to have to do that. Traveling now is a pain in the ass. It really is. It used to be fantastic. Now it's not. So I kind of avoid it. Now, I do love playing live, and it's very important to maintain, your skill to be playing live. That's very important. But I do get bored of playing the same old song all over the time, all over, over and over again. I even get bored playing my own music with Protocol. 3 or 4 weeks, I'm done with these songs. I want to play a vocal song. I want to play some heavy metal, So one thing I really enjoy is doing session work. It's kind of not the first thing, but almost the first thing I did when I became professional. I joined my dad's band when I was very, very young. I was 12 years old and became a professional musician then, which I know sounds ridiculous. And when I look at a 12-year-old now, I go, how was that even possible? But due to the situation, the circumstances around what was happening with my father and his band, and the way I grew up playing his music, I became the drummer of the band. Now, it was a real apprenticeship, and 4 years of touring with this band, plus doing recording sessions with him, that prepared me for going out into the big world and also doing studio work. So at 16, suddenly I was thrust out into the big wide world in London. And before I knew it, after getting an audition to do Jesus Christ Superstar, which was one of the major West End shows in London at the time, from there, I started getting asked to do demo sessions. And from there, it just blossomed. So towards the end of 1974, the end of 1973, all the way up to 77, I hardly went on the road at all. I was in the studio most of the time. I went on the road a little bit in 75 with the band that I was in, not for very long though, a couple of months, 3 months maybe, on and off. And then really from mid 75, I was in studios all the way through up until the end of 76. So I garnered a lot of studio experience, and I learned an awful lot. And I got to learn to play many different styles of music. Now, 50 years later, almost, no, probably, yeah, actually, 49, 48, something like that.
We're not counting. We're musicians. We're musicians, not mathematicians.
My outlook now is I really enjoy playing on people's records. I mean, as long as it makes sense, as long as the song is good or the music is good, I find it a wonderful challenge. And especially now, because I do it here at my house in my own studio. I'm engineering. I get to work on this tune, and obviously the artist has to trust me to do I hope what will be the right thing. Often I'll take it in a very different direction that was very different to maybe there was a drum program, because I listen to it and then I mute it and don't listen to it, just listen to the track. And that gives me another way of looking at this song. Sometimes it's very straightforward. What the artist program was, yeah, pretty much right. I might change a few patterns around, but that's basically the song. So that's what I do. I make sure the sound is right, matches the song, fits in nicely, and it's a lovely challenge. So a lot of the work I do is what I call session work. It's lovely, So there's not a lot of choice involved. Somebody will contact me. I'll say, send me an MP3 of the track and let me see if I can contribute to it. 9 times out of 10, I go, that's interesting. Yeah, all right, I'll do that. Very occasionally it's like, no, I don't think I can offer this very much, and I'll just tell the person, no, not this time.
Well, what kind of things? What kind of things would make you turn a project down? Like, is it like just style, or like? Because I mean, you're a very versatile drummer. Like, what would be like the thing to make you say no?
It would be the composition. It would be if it's like, oh no, that's like you see, these days you're not always dealing with professional musicians. A lot of people now playing music, they have another job. Now that doesn't mean that they're good or bad. I've had some, especially when COVID happened, suddenly it's a chance for people that have always played music, love playing music, play, actually quite well. But, a life in music as a profession, it's a tough gig. And they made that decision early on. No, you know what? I want a steady job and I want to do well. And that's what they've done, but they've never given up on the music. Now, all of a sudden, we're getting two things happening. We're getting to a stage where a lot of people are retiring from their profession. And finally, they've made enough money to be able to pursue what they really have always wanted to do, which is make music. So many sessions I do, they're doctors, they're engineers, not sound engineers, different, they're from lawyers, from all different backgrounds. And yet they've always wanted to be a musician. And they probably play, as an amateur musician on the weekends, maybe, I don't know. But then they've finally got an opportunity to write some music, or maybe it's a collection of songs they've had for years, and actually get, professional musicians to play on it of their choice. And now we had another little thing happen, and that was called COVID, where suddenly nobody had a job to go to because you couldn't do it. And within about 2 weeks of March the 19th, which is kind of when it came down in the States, I was getting emails from all over the world asking me to play on their records. And I went, okay. And this was really interesting. Some of the music was fantastic. It was like, wow, this is professional standard music, compositions. This is great. Some of it wasn't. So, that's how you pick and choose between what works and what doesn't. And I still love doing recording sessions because I get a chance to play music that I wouldn't normally play. Singer-songwriter music, which I love doing. I did many of these sessions back in the 70s and the 80s. And it's a different craft. And you have to have the experience of knowing how to play simply, knowing how to get a sound that really suits it's not a drummy sound. It's a record sound. It's a record producing sound, and how to get these sounds. So I love doing that. It's very creative to me to play other people's music and sculpture the sound of the kit to make it work with that song. And sometimes I'll really go radical on it, but generally I keep pretty much the same drum kit. I'll just change the snare drum sound, change the bass drum sound, but I can also do other things. I can change the gain of all the microphones and play at a different level. That changes the sound enormously. Like, for example, something that I got into doing more in recent years, actually. When you play a ballad, slow ballad, how about whacking all the mic pre's up, 5 dB or something, and then going out and playing quietly. So you have to be very controlled, because if you accidentally hit like a rim shot, you've clipped, okay? But the sound of the drums, the instrument is like, oh, wow. Now, I learned that. Of course, what I like to say is that I stole everything I know from the people I work with. The engineers, the drummers, I stole everything. That's how I learned. And Matt's, he used to record all of ABBA's records. Swedish guy, Matt. Oh gosh, I can't go. His name escaped.
We can put an editor's note in.
Yeah. I was working with him. He was the guy that recorded Jeff Beck's Guitar Workshop.
Oh wow,
wonderful engineer. And I did an Ian Gillan album with him, and we did this one track where he said, "Listen, I'm just going to use overheads, so I'm going to crank them and put some compression on them. Play quietly." And I was even playing bass drum, but we weren't using the bass drum mic. We were just using the overheads. I think we had a pair of C12s, beautiful old AKG C12s. So they actually have a lot of bottom end on them. It's a very full range microphone, which can be great on a drum kit, but can also not be great because of that. You might have to high pass them a little bit. The sound I was playing, I can't remember what I was. It's on that album though. Thunder, something like that. Days of Thunder or something like that. And I was playing bass drum and maybe some tom-toms with mallets. I went in the control room and I went, "Oh, that's great. How did you do that?" And he told me, he said, everything else is pretty much off. Maybe there were some ambient spikes. I just cranked them. and you play quietly. Listen to the sound. So I always remember that. So that's a little trick I do. It makes a drum kit sound huge, but warm and generous. So it doesn't fight the song, sonically. This is why the snare drum is always the most important thing when sculpturing a sound to a track. Is this the right snare drum sound for that track? And even just changing that one snare drum will change the way the kit sounds, because it might be a quieter snare drum or it might be a louder snare drum. That's going to change the way it leaps onto the overheads, the tom mics, ambients. And then you play to that. That's the thing. So that's why I love doing recording sessions. And I get to play the song once, maybe a few takes, a couple of punch-ins, and that's it. I never have to play it again. It's perfect. It sounds very mercenary, but it's not, because I really enjoy doing that. And then I send it back to the artist, and 9 times out of 10, they love it. Sometimes they go, yeah, but this section, I actually really want to have that groove. Okay, all right, we'll do that, And sometimes they're right. I hear it one way and I give them my impression of the song. And most of the time, people love it. But there are times where people don't. They go, I really think we need that groove that was set up. Okay, then. And then I listen to it. I'm a little disappointed because I worked hard on it. And then I go out and play it, and I go, you know what? Actually, he's right. He's totally right. That works better, But that's about working with people, and working together, and all in a good fashion to go forward with the music,
So you are an artist that always seems to get the right gig. I mean, we talked about in the intro. I mean, the people you've played with is just insane. Like, obviously, you were in Toto, which is just being in Toto is a signaler to musicians that you're a high level guy. I mean, the Who, you played with Judas Priest and stuff like that, and you always seem to get the gig. And my question is, are there things that artists maybe who aren't at your level can do to help them get the gig consistently? Like these, and I'm not necessarily saying these big gigs, but like you constantly keep getting these great gigs that are high profile. What can artists do to improve their odds in getting more and better gigs?
Well, I think back in the 60s and the 70s, and also growing up in London and England, we had radio airplay in those days was very different in Britain to how it was in the States. The impression I get is in the States you had all these different radio stations, and they tend to specialize in a certain type of music. So you grow up in one area and tuned into a certain station, you're going to get a certain type of music for most of the day. Now in England, that didn't happen. We only had 4 radio stations, and actually 3 to start with, the BBC stations. We had what was called the Light program, the Third program, and what was that called? The Light, Third, and Home. I think that's what it was called. It then turned into BBC Radio 1, Radio 2, and Radio 3, and then they added Radio 4. And the only alternatives in the 60s were the pirate ships, Radio Caroline, Radio Luxembourg, coming from, because living in England, we could pick up radio waves from Europe. And that's why during the war, Germany used to transmit programs as propaganda to the British. And they have an English guy actually who was a supporter of Nazi Germany programming these programs. And the Brits did it too. We programmed to Germany as well. There was another war going on, and it's really fascinating. If you read there's a wonderful book called 100 Years of the BBC, and the BBC is probably the most widespread international broadcasting company in the whole world. I mean, they had outposts everywhere, and especially during that time. So there was a war going on of propaganda of the airwaves. So you could pick up radio stations always you lived in London, you could pick up, from Holland, Hilversum, Radio Luxembourg, Caroline, which is on a pirate ship out in the North Sea, but outside the 3-mile exclusion zone. So the Coast Guard couldn't do anything about it. So they weren't technically illegal, but they weren't, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I used to know the owner of Caroline, Ronan O'Reilly, which that movie was made about, by the way, with Bill Nighy in it. Fantastic movie. I can't remember what it was called, but in those days we had very few radio stations which were transmitted all over the country, all the way up to Scotland. They had a playlist that covered such a wide range of music. So, you would get like Isaac Hayes' theme from Shaft, and the next tune would be like ELO, or you might get, you probably wouldn't get Frank Sinatra. He would be on a different station, and with the jazz bands, like my dad's band, and like Glenn Miller, and like Woody Herman, that's a different program. But so we grew up listening to all these different styles of music, and therefore we actually had to learn to play all these styles of music. So as you learning your instrument, you're learning to play all these different styles of music. That's what you had to do in order to get a gig. So this is a very old-fashioned kind of way of looking at it. You've got to be able to play a tango. You've got to be able to play a cha-cha. You've got to be able to play swing. You've got to be able to play boogaloo. It's these mix of styles. I think in the States, people didn't learn quite so much how to play these different styles. They specialized more. And that's why we used to love coming over here and listening to the radio, because we've got a whole program of R&B. It was like, wow, this is great. A load of stacks. Memphis, each town had its sound. London didn't have its sound. I mean, it did in one way, but it had many sounds, many types of music. And I think that's true to say about most of Europe. So armed with this experience of being able to play these different styles, that's how you get employed. And that's how I got booked for doing sessions. I turn up to a session, I didn't know what I was going to play. And you have to read music, of course. That was the other thing. And I go, okay, what tempo is this? Oh, like around here. Oh, okay. What style is it? Well, it's kind of like it's got slight like a country and western kind of thing. Oh, not my favorite music, but okay. So boom, doom, 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 all the way through. Not the most exciting session, but you had to play it, and you had to play it well and convincingly. So that was, who are we going to book for the session? Well, actually, he's a young drummer on the scene, and can he read? Yeah, he can read music. Can he play like different styles? Oh yeah, he's got, So even though they were styles I didn't maybe like playing, much more wanted to play rock and roll or some fusion or something. But that's how we did it back then, and that's how I was able to play on all these different records and kept getting asked to play on them. Pete Townsend album, Empty Glass. There's a song on there which is like a tango. And he said, yeah, this whole section is really a tango. Now, I used to play tangos with my dad, and I hated them. It was a horrible thing to play. It's like, no. But now, of course, in recent years, I've been to Buenos Aires, and I've been to a tango cafe, and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's lovely, But I was much younger then and didn't want to play this shit, But Pete, he goes, what's a tango? And I go, isn't that a bit old-fashioned? He said, go out there and play it. So, do you see what I mean? It's the being able to adapt to these different styles that will come up in the most unlikely place. I never thought on a Pete Townsend solo album we'd be playing a tango. You know, I mean, we didn't play it exactly like a tango, but the basic groove was a tango. And it was wonderful. You know, so you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be able to play different styles in order to, you know, get an audition or to be recommended to play with somebody. So, you know, I think we get into this little narrow-minded way of playing specific types of music, you know, and that's fine if you're in a band and you all want to play the same music. Fine, great, specialize in it. That's wonderful. But I think 9 times out of 10, there's only a few players that you could pick out of that band and book for a session, you know, doing something else. Kenny Aronoff, he can do it. He can play it so many different ways, you know. All the session guys really in Los Angeles or New York, you know, that's one of the skills of learning your instrument and being able to adapt, you know. I've had to do it. I've adapted from playing on a Judas Priest album to a Bobby Benton album, you know, with the same producer, by the way. It's hilarious, you know.
So when you talked about reading music, they're not giving you drum notation, are they? What kind of what are they giving you? Lead sheet? Like, what are they giving you?
It depends. I mean, back in the day, we used to get drum charts, specifically written out drum charts. Typically, though, most sessions are a chord chart with a few figures. Rarely do I get, well, these days I'm doing my own charts anyway. But if there's a session, actually, you know what? Last year, I did a couple of sessions at Sunset Sound in LA. And it was a rock session, but they'd actually had an arranger come in and write all charts. I was going, why do we have charts for this kind of music? And they were actually very specific. And I went, bloody hell, I haven't read a chart for ages. You know. But yeah, I mean, you get all sorts of different charts, from one that's very detailed to one that's just literally a chord chart. You write in your own things.
So, do you practice a lot these days? Like, obviously, like, you're at a certain high level performer, you're great recording, but do you practice? You take time to actually practice these days?
Not nearly as much as I should.
Have you had periods of your life where you've practiced a bunch though, and practiced lots? You must have practiced a lot in your youth, I'm imagining.
You know, I played every day, learning to play the drums up until until I left home, and I went to live in an apartment in Kensington in London where I couldn't practice. And from that day onwards, I kind of lost that thing of regular practice. Now, that doesn't mean to say I don't practice, but often, especially in that apartment, I actually taught myself to become a left-handed drummer from a right-handed drummer. And I did that all on a sofa arm, the arm of a sofa, because I couldn't make any noise. But it was actually very good because I could hear the tone of the sticks on the arm, and so I would play a little bit right-handed and then try to replicate it left-handed. A lot of it is the touch and the velocity that has to change. And then I'd get a session, I'd turn up and I'd try playing open-handed instead of like this, because I wanted to play like that. And that's how I practiced, was really by doing sessions and then going on the road. But in terms of actual practice sessions, they kind of stopped once I had moved out of the house I grew up in, because I couldn't make a noise anymore, you know.
What do you think in your time in your youth that you did practice more? What do you think were the most beneficial things that you spent practicing? And then what do you think was the biggest waste of time in practicing?
The funny thing is, I was not very technical.
What?
Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I mean, I did try to copy, play along. I used to play along with records, but before that, so I had a drum teacher called Max Abrams who used to play drums in my dad's band back in the 50s, maybe even before the war, maybe in the 30s. I'm not quite sure. He taught many British drummers. Phil Collins was one of them, but he basically just taught me how to read. he gave me his book, and the book was all drum exercises, rudiments and stuff like that. I glazed over. I had no interest in it at all, because I had grown up playing to records. So in other words, learning how to play songs, that's what I did. My dad would maybe write a new arrangement for the band, and as soon as he'd done the drum part, he'd give it to me. He said, there you go. So I got a drum part to read. Now, I didn't have the music because he hadn't recorded the song yet, but I got used to reading a chart as opposed to drum rudiments. Now, to me, that was much more exciting because there was a point to it. And I used to play along to all these records, to Buddy Rich, to Louis Bellson, to Gene Kruger, along with a Benny Goodman band. And then I started playing, more modern jazz. Stan Kenton, Peter Erskine was the drummer. John Van Oldham was the drummer, depending, what era I was playing to. Don Ellis, of course, I love the Don Ellis band. Ralph Humphreys was the drummer. Steve Bohannon was the drummer. And I'd learn how to play all these different time signatures, and that's really how I learned to play drums. I didn't even know what a paradiddle was when I was playing with my dad. I know it sounds crazy, but one drummer, one of the support band, I was setting up my drums. He said, "Oh, you're setting up your dad's drum kit." I went, No, it's my drum kit. And he went, and I was probably like 13. He goes away and he comes back with a pair of sticks. I was still setting up, my stick bag was still in the box. He said, "Here you go, play me a paradiddle." What's that? And he went, yeah, right, So he thought I was just being a kid,
Yeah.
So they play, and then my dad comes on, and I play, reading charts, and I see him in the wings, and he's looking at me going, huh? And he can't play a paradiddle. I mean, I probably could play a paradiddle, I just didn't know what I was playing.
Yeah.
He just couldn't figure it out. He said, how is he playing like, it sounds like a professional? Well, I was a professional, actually, but a very young one and a very inexperienced one. So, and it wasn't really till much later that I thought, I started listening to Billy Cobham a lot. Billy was, and still is, one of my main mentors of playing, just for many, many reasons, and many other players, by the way. But I would say Billy at that point that's what helped me guide me into how I wanted to play. And he was, of course, super technical, and he played in drum corps, so he knew all those. So that's when I thought, I think this is important. So I got that old book out, and again I went right paradiddle, and I started learning how to do all this stuff, as well as swapping to playing left-handed. I suddenly realized this is really important. So that's where the technique came in. I mean, it wasn't that my technique was non-existent. It was okay. I was playing drum solos and everything, but I wasn't very studied in it, let's say. It was a bit haphazardly, and then slowly I started learning rudiments, and then starting coming up with my own versions of them, which I still do today, actually, because doing drum clinics, and also warming up. What's a way to practice? And I have this 10-minute routine. I don't do it every day. I've been working here, so I haven't done it for over a week. But I have a practice pad set up in the kitchen with a pair of sticks. And unless people are coming around for dinner or something, I never put them away. Just so I walk and I go, oh, I haven't practiced for 3 days. Make a cappuccino, or something. I really should. Oh, no, emails. No, I'm going to practice. So it's like, it's not a big commitment. It's only 10 minutes. And the rudiments that I do are specifically designed to give you the most benefit from playing these quite tricky combinations of things, which don't just concentrate on sticking. They concentrate on timekeeping. They concentrate on dynamics and what I call, what's the word? Transition from one kind of sticking to another kind of sticking without hearing a difference. Because when we play music, we're dealing with transitions all the time. So we count in the song. We go, okay, 1, 2, 3, dagadum, bang, down, intro, right? And then a fill, verse, whatever it is. Then we got another transition because we've got a B section coming up. Okay, do that, go, bang, change the chords, right? 4 bars, maybe 8 bar, and then we'll go back to the verse, or we'll hit a chorus. These are all transitions, and these are the danger points where a lot of inexperienced players start wavering their time. They do a drum fill and they rush. They come down on the downbeat early, or they drag and they come late. You see, that's where the problems are. So I try to come up with some exercises that dealt with transitions, because you can tell when you go from one kind of sticking to another kind of sticking, your groove, your tempo just loses a little bit or gains a little bit. And that, I think, is because it's all part of the same thing. You're changing your sticking, but your time must never change. The groove must always be consistent. So it's and I show this to people in clinics and master classes and stuff. I even got somebody to actually transcribe it, because my writing's really scrawly, and he did it all beautifully in a computer, and it was lovely. And I hand these out, and I said, don't forget these. Try them. I find them hugely useful. And then if I've suddenly got some like a live show to play, or even a clinic, oh boy, and then I'm going to suddenly start practicing. It's crash course in practicing, So yeah, but I should practice more.
Is there anything that you think that you practiced that was a waste of time?
No, not at all. No, absolutely not. Everything is beneficial. Yeah.
I love it. It's really been funny. So like I said, I think this is episode 18 of the podcast, and I've asked all sorts of musicians, like, what is the best use of time practicing? And about 10 of them have said playing along to records and playing along to, which has been kind of a mind-blowing thing, because I would assume it'd be something different, but almost all of them are just like, no, like, that's how you learn groove, that's how you learn arrangement, that's how you learn feel. And it's just, again and again, it just keeps coming up that this is like such an important thing for musicians to do if they want to get better.
The one really important thing is, depending on the records you're playing along to, you're playing along with first-class musicians. That's the other thing. Let's say you play along to Mahavishnu, Mahavishnu record. You're playing along with great musicians. Let's say you play one of the albums I used to love playing along to. There's a couple, actually. One was a Billy Paul album, famous hit, Me and Mrs. Jones. At the age of 14 or something, that's one of the most difficult slow tempos to play. And I used to practice that with it. God, it's so slow. How do I keep time? And I ended up playing with a bass player many times who played on that record, a guy called Anthony Jackson. He was on that session.
Oh, yeah. The 6-string guy, right?
Huh?
The 6-string bass guy, right?
Well, yeah, eventually 6-string, but he was playing a 4-string. But Anthony is, probably my favorite bass player, probably everybody's favorite bass player, like all the bass players. Anthony, so special. And we played a lot. He was actually in one of the first renditions of Protocol. Amazingly.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he was in the 90 version of Protocol.
Is there a record with him on it?
Yes, there is. He's on a video that I did in 92 for DCI, where we do some Protocol songs. And there's a live album called Force Majeure, which is, I think it's out of print now. It was released on B&W, which is a speaker company, Bowers and Wilkins. And they formed a label because they need, they want to have music that's mixed on their speakers and as demonstration purposes. Aieto Moreira was on the label. Various Ray Russell, great guitarist, English guitarist, and Protocol was on. So it's called Force Majeure, and it's a live album with a bit of studio mixed in there as well. So Anthony's on that. But playing along with records, I used to play along with that. I used to play along with Isaac Hayes, the Shaft album, not just not just the
the hi-hat intro.
but the other tunes, which are fantastic,
Yeah.
beautiful arrangements. Isaac did some beautiful compositions.
Oh yeah.
And all the players on it. I used to play along on with that record a lot, just to get the groove. And you're playing with great musicians who play in time. So it's the best way to learn how to play music.
One of my favorite records to play along to as a guitar player is "Walk On By" Isaac Hayes. Is just, just getting to play the.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Speaking of Anthony Jackson, this is a record I don't feel like enough people have heard of it, but it's one of my absolute favorites with him on it. Is the record he did with I'm gonna hopefully I get his name right, but it's Michel Camino big band record.
Michel Camino, yes.
Oh my gosh, he played on a big band record with him, and there's a song on there called "Sweet Sandrin Version 3," and he has a bass solo in the beginning of it, and it's divine. It's super good. I love it.
Well, have you heard the Hiromi records that we did?
You did. He was on the Hiromi records.
He was in the band.
What?
The
Japanese pianist, right?
The trio, yeah, the trio project. We started in 2010, and we went for 6 years. We made 4 albums and a load of touring.
Wait, hold on. Pull the phone. You, Anthony Jackson, and Hiromi, a trio together? Oh my God!
You didn't know? I
swear to God, no.
Okay, you listen to those records.
Okay, which one's your favorite? Which one's your favorite?
Oh boy, well, I think probably the last one, because we had played so much together by that time. It was really cohesive. But all of them are great. All of them are adventures and musicality and music. But I think we probably contributed more on the last album, just because we were playing a lot together, and we knew each other really well. So it's a lovely album. But any of them is good.
Yeah, I'll definitely check them out. I just that's one of the fun things about having you on as a guest is I keep looking at records and I'm like, oh, he played with this person and it's just like I was looking the other night. And I've already done tons of research, but I didn't realize that you had played on the Michael Schenker Group first record. I had no idea, and I love that. There's a part in there where the intro riff plays, and then you do this Armed and Ready.
Yes.
And I was like, I had no idea that was you, and I've air drummed that drum part so many times, and it's just like it's one of those things where it's like I had no idea that was you.
Yeah, Wessex Studios in London. Roger Glover was producing.
Really? From Deep Purple?
Yeah, he was producing in those days. Yeah, he produced the Judas Priest album. All sorts of stuff. I played on a solo album in '76. Gary Edwards was the engineer. Mo Foster played bass. Gary Bardens was singing, and Michael. And I used my Tama kit, Fiberglass kit, and I remember the sessions very well. Yeah.
Oh man, that's so awesome. As a guitar player, Michael Schenker is one of my absolute favorites. Like he just rocks, especially the UFO stuff as well. I mean, Strangers in the Night, the live album they did, is a top 10 record for me. It's just
right.
It's so good, so good.
His sound is just amazing. It's the perfect rock guitar sound.
He is, yeah. When he gets that flying V going, I mean, can't lose.
Beautiful.
So speaking of all these musicians you've played with, I mean, again, like if anyone wants to go to Simon's Wikipedia and just look at all the different records and people you've played with, I mean, it's just insane. Like, I mean, you've played with Brian Eno, Jeff Beck, I mean, and even like more modern people like Hiromi. And so I guess one of my questions is, when you enter a new musical project where you don't know anybody in the group, what kind of things are you looking for in order to quote unquote fit in with your drumming? Like what kind of things are you looking for from a musical standpoint? Like, are you trying to figure out where you fit in? Are there things you're listening for? How are you thinking about playing? Are you just going for it and adjusting on the fly? How is your approach when you enter like a completely new music situation?
Well, have a very open mind. Don't have any preconceived ideas. You're gonna go into, especially I would, that to me would be a studio scenario, be a session scenario, because that's what's going to happen most when you go into a room with people that you don't know. So, you have to be, friendly, open, and introduced to, hi, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, hi, how do you do? Oh, lovely to have you here. Great, and hi, and this is so and so. So you're meeting people, and then probably my drum kit has been delivered and set up, and I mean, these days it's a little bit different because people know that they know me, they know the drum kit, and most of the engineers even, I mean, they even let me mic the drum kit up. I mean, or they're very like, I mean, even with Al Schmidt, I mean, I actually mic the drums up. He said, no, go ahead, that's fine. We discussed what I was going to use. He said, that all sounds great, because basically the way I do it is pretty much how everybody does it anyway. All those engineers. And then, but some might go, oh, no, actually, I'd like to use these. And I said, fine, well, whatever you want to do. I'm just, recommending. And they usually take my recommendations because they know, have heard me on lots of records. But let's go back a little bit before that, let's say. So the first thing, you see lots of microphones on stands, and they're, and I'll have a look and I go, okay, great. I probably won't say anything to start with. Let them do their job, and then, just kind of you chat a little bit, and they say, right, let's hear the music. And so they'll run the track, which either might be a demo or it might be a pre-recorded backing track they've already got. And then you might say, well, do you have a chart or anything? And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Oh, yeah, here's or you don't, So I might, let me listen to it and I'll do a chart. And everybody in the room might be doing a chart too, if maybe Nathan East is on bass, so he'll be doing, he has perfect pitch, so you don't even have to tell him what key it's in. He's already writing notes. I mean, it's really amazing. I love that. So all the musicians are probably, jotting down some charts if they don't have one. And then we get drum sounds, and sometimes it goes very smoothly, sometimes it doesn't. Just have to be patient and just work with everybody. And, when it comes time to play the music, Don't try to... a lovely story from Peter Erskine. We were recording a straight-ahead jazz album at my old studio, Phantom Recordings in Sherman Oaks. And I played a couple of days, and then Pete came in to play a couple of days. Dave Carpenter on bass, and the horn player was Brandon Fields. And it was an Italian piano player, and he was playing acoustic piano in a piano booth. So, and I was engineering the session. So, mic'd up Pete's drums, got some sounds, mic'd up the horn, and bass was all ready to go, piano was all ready to go. Off we go. And so, I love engineering other drummers. Absolutely love it, especially when they're great drummers, like Vinnie Colaiuta or Greg Bissonette or Will Kennedy. I'm just trying to think of all the drummers I've engineered. And this was having to be Pete on this session. And they do one take, and of course I'm recording from the get-go, and I'm just keeping an eye on everything, keeping an eye on all my pre's, input gains, compression if I'm using it, and just making sure everything's going down nicely and the balance is good, and maybe listening to the headphones, making sure that's good. And so they do this take, and it's lovely. It's absolutely lovely. And Pete goes, okay, let's do this again. Let's do another take. And guys, let's not try to impress each other. I was on the floor. I was howling. I thought that was one of the best quotes I think I've ever heard in a studio. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Don't try to impress anybody. Don't try to get all your flash licks out. Play the music. Play what the music needs. As little or as much as the music needs. It's a wonderful concept. And ever since that day, I've just thought, oh, that's brilliant. And, I remind myself too, let's not try to impress each other. I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful concept, wonderful way to play. And the next take was a gorgeous take. It had so much groove, and the solos were great, and everybody just played together. It was lovely. So that's the approach.
I love it. I think I might get a tattoo of that quote on my arm just to remind myself. That's a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So one final question in this this main section, and you can answer this however you like. Do you have any regrets in your musical journey?
Mostly no. There's a couple of sessions that I would have loved to have done and couldn't because of circumstance. One was Paul McCartney. I was leaving for the States, I think, the next day, something like that. So I just wasn't able to get down to EMI to play a session. The other one was Marvin Gaye. He was up at Air Studios, and I would have loved to have done it, but it was the organization was a bit weird, and I'm like, well, call me if you need me. I'll come down. I can get my kit there. Yeah, okay. And then I didn't get a call back, and then I got a call later. Yeah, well, we're still, it just didn't happen. It wasn't very well organized. Let's put it like that. I would have loved to have done that. That would have been great. Live things. I mean, always there's stuff that you couldn't do. When The Who went out in 1996 doing Quadrophenia, I was in Toto and we were on the road. And I was under the impression, I wasn't really sure when we were going to finish this tour because dates kept getting added. And Pete was calling me, said, look, we're holding rehearsals back because we'd really like you to do it. Can you do it? So Pete, I still don't know. And eventually they had to make a decision, and they went ahead with what it would have been Zach, because Zach was already playing with Roger Daltrey and his solo thing. And almost just a week after that, Toto, everyone decided, well, that's it. We're done with it. So I went to see the LA show, but that's all that, So that was one I thought that would have been lovely to do. The other thing was the London Olympics. I was asked to play with two artists at the London Olympics. One was The Who, and one was Mike Oldfield. And we were out on tour with Toto. So that would have been nice, seeing as it was London, Olympics. Would have loved to have played.
Not many bigger stages than that. Not
many. And played with two different bands. That would have been amazing. But, but the thing is, I'm a member of a band. I'm not sideman. I'm a full member of the band. It's in my interest. And this is what happens, So, and I think that was one of the things with being out on the road with Toto a lot. I was running a studio, producing, engineering, mixing people's projects, and it was starting to get too much road work. I was on the road too much. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I didn't really want to travel. I wanted to get back and do what I love to do, which is make records. If people really ask, well, what do you do? I'm tempted to say, I make records for a living, because that's really what I do from the beginning, from the inception of it, all the way to even up to even with my own record label, into the distribution of it. I have a distribution company I'm signed to. So all the way from the creation of it, the recording of it, the booking the studios, the musicians, mixing, overdubs, designing the cover or helping design the cover, all this, every aspect of getting these songs onto that little disc, or preferably the bigger disc, which is black and vinyl.
That's what we dream for, but it ends up on a little phone like this.
Exactly.
I know.
So, and that's when I the decision to leave the band was, kind of made for me, really. I just said, yeah, I think that's it. So time to bid farewell, and I've done 21 years in the band, contributed a lot, ended up engineering the band, engineering the records, mixing some stuff, and mixing live, like DVD. I just needed to. I love creating new music. That's why the studio to me is. I grew up in a studio. Even when I was a kid, my dad would drag me to the BBC studios, and I'd sit behind the drummer. So the environment of a microphone hanging over a drum kit and a red light on at the end of the room and a big clock in BBC studio, still recording mono, by the way. That was the environment. I loved it.
Yeah, I totally relate to that too. I remember probably about 10 years ago, I was playing in a band, and our band was pretty successful, and it was going well, but I just wasn't enjoying playing all the shows, because you might play 50 to 100 shows in a year. I mean, more if you're in a bigger band, right? And I just hated how much time all that rehearsal was. And I remember I was telling this to a producer friend of mine, and he was just like, you can just like not do that and just write songs and play in the studio and stuff like that. And that was a real big, like, oh yeah, like you can just specialize in one. And that's one of the reasons I love why I do at Rhinestones, because it's like I like playing live every once in a while, like like you said, but for me it's far more satisfying to create new music or help people create music. So I 100% understand that completely.
Yeah.
So this is the rapid fire section of the interview. It's just a few questions I want to ask, and just get your first thought, best thought, and then we'll be done with the interview. Sound good?
All right. Sounds good. Yep.
What is the last album that blew your mind?
Oh, I hate these questions. John McLaughlin album. It's an album that he did, I think, during COVID. It's with Mahadevan and Zakir Hussain, and it's called This Is It. Is that so? Is that? Oh God, I can't remember the title, but it's a beautiful album. It's just it's guitar, John playing guitar and guitar synth. Mahadevan is the most beautiful singer who sings in Shakti, his band, and Zakir Hussain, who's the most amazing.
I love Zakir.
I have to say, I mean, I've recently got into a lot of vinyl, and so I am buying kind of remastered vinyl, some of the really ultra high quality vinyls that they have. So that's a hard question, because I'll listen to that, and then I'll listen to another, go, oh, this is great, So, but I think that made a very big impression on me. Was that album beautiful?
Who is a drummer that deserves more attention?
Boy. Oh gosh, I mean, there's so many great players. I mean, oh damn, that's a really hard question. I'm going through the file effects, all the different players. Oh, I can't answer that. There's just so many beautiful players out there. Grady Tate. There you go.
Okay.
Do you know who that is?
I don't know who that is. Can you tell me more?
Grady Tate used to play with Jimmy Smith. He is a singer too. He made a record actually as a singer. He played on a lot of Quincy Jones albums. He's sadly no longer with us. I never met Grady, but I love his playing. And I think I always mention him when people say, who are your influences? I always try to remember to say Grady, because there was a point there where I used to play along to those Quincy Jones albums, and just beautiful playing. I mean, we're talking 60s now, 60s, early 70s, but just a beautiful player, and a slightly different approach to playing swing, playing straight ahead, which I really loved. So I'm going to mention him. Yeah.
Any particular songs people should check out from him?
Yeah. Listen to Quincy does a version of What's Going on an album called Smackwater Jack. This came out in 72, beautifully recorded. I'm not sure who the engineer was on that record, but it could have been Phil Ramone, because he used to engineer before, he started producing, and he engineered some of my favorite albums. And I never knew that until after I'd worked with him. And had I known that, oh boy, our dinner would have been very long. He, by the way, is, in terms of a producer, inspiration from working with a producer, he's the guy I like to model myself on in terms of how he runs a session, how he produces. Loved it. Loved the way he worked.
What's special about his sessions?
He says nothing.
That's the best kind of engineer.
He sits there and he creates the environment for you to work, and he doesn't say a thing until he needs to. And I think that's absolutely lovely. Make sure you've got the right studio, the right engineer, the right musicians for the artist, and everything is smooth. And then sit back. If the artist is well in control, he knows what he's doing. Sit back and just observe and listen. And then, guys, let's try this as an example. And let's try slow this tune down. It's a little quick. Oh, okay. Or something. He'll just bring your attention to something that nobody was thinking about. And I only ever did one album with him, and it was one of the most pleasurable experiences ever. And he'll come out into the studio and and chat and say, talk about it. But he was just very, he just let it happen. He wasn't making his solo album, which a lot of producers do.
That's fair. I definitely know a few people like that. If you lost all of your gear in a tragic house fire and had to start over with only $1,000 USD, because you're a Brit, what would you get?
Well, that actually happened.
What?
I did lose all my gear, all my recording gear in a house fire.
No, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
This is a brand new house. The Thomas fire took the whole thing down.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but $1,000 isn't going to do it.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, you got about $1,000 just to the right of you.
Oh gosh. Well, what am I trying to replace? Just something.
Everything. You lose all your gear. What's your first move? If you only have $1,000, the insurance adjuster comes around, says, "Here's $1,000 for your music gear." Sorry. What do you do?
Well, I mean, that's very limiting. I mean, you could probably get a used refurbed. No, even for $1,000, you can't even get a computer, can you?
I mean, you could get an older MacBook, probably for $1,000.
Yeah. I might just go out and buy some really nice bottles of wine.
Oh, that's not helpful. That's not helpful, Simon.
Boy, I mean, I think the most important thing is to be able to create. I think in this day and age, we are computer bound, and we're computer bound in terms of communication. So yeah, I would say I'd look around for a donation or a used laptop, PowerBook. It's probably going to be the most useful. Because with that, I'm going to need a pair of headphones. And with that, I'm going to need maybe some subscriptions to buy, unless I've already got them. But you got to get that within the $1,000.
Yeah.
And they're going to need some sort of MIDI keyboard. And you're going to need to buy some software. I mean, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that would at least give you, something to play with, to work with, even to listen to music on. I think at that stage, it's probably more important just to get a nice, you want to get a nice pair, you'll get a decent pair of headphones and a laptop and iTunes and Spotify and stuff, and be able to listen to music. I think that's probably the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's another mind-blowing thing about this podcast is I've asked every guest that so far on this podcast, and almost all of them have said some sort of computer and software, and because that is just, even like people like you who are high-level instrumentalists, they're like, no, I'd rather. In fact, your collaborator Greg Howe, he said, yeah, he was like, I would get a computer first before I get a guitar. I would get the best computer I could. It's crazy how big of a theme that is. When you think like, someone like you or Greg Howe, you would go for drums or guitar, but it's just kind of one of those things that just, it's one of those things running this podcast I'm learning, and it just always blows my mind.
Yeah. Maybe I'll get a pair of sticks too.
Yeah, those aren't too bad. How do you recover from a bad gig?
Now that's a very good question. So my philosophy is, when you have a great gig, you learn absolutely nothing. Everything sounded great, you played well, and you played well, and it sounded good, and the band sounded great. It's great for the ego, and it's great for feeling good, but you learn nothing. When you play a gig that hasn't gone so well, that's when you're learning. That's when you're trying to figure out halfway through the gig, this is not going well. What can I do to change it? What do I need to do? That's when you're being pushed. So that's why, that's what I try to look at it as a positive, not a negative. We all have bad gigs. I mean, how many times out of a tour do you have a really great gig? There's always things that could be better, but you also have to keep it in perspective too. You've got to, certain musicians, something goes wrong on stage and they just can't get over it. And the audience can even see that too. My thing was always, how does the audience perceive it? 9 times out of 10, they didn't even notice. And that doesn't mean that I'm being not abusive, critical of them. Not at all. It's just perspective plays such a big part. It wouldn't, even if I were at a concert, I don't mean to undermine the audience, not at all. But, when you're very close to something and you're playing it every night, it's their one night seeing that gig on a tour. It's a totally different thing. They're loving it, I also, being more of a jazz player, I also do like the accidents. I actually kind of go, well, that was a very interesting little thing, but we kind of recovered from it. We got around it. One of the things I learned about making a mistake and pontificating on it. In 1985, I delved into motor racing, and I started doing Formula Ford 1600 in England. Now, it's very interesting how you can take a concept from one totally different environment to another. What I learned in motor racing was, so you make a lot of mistakes, especially when you're starting off. And I went to a racing school, and then I had coaching, as you do when you with a team. They always, give you coaching and stuff, because usually one of the team is an ex-driver or maybe still a driver, So classic example, you miss a gear, and it jumps out, and therefore everything's gone wrong. You're trying to brake to this corner, but it's all a bit of a mess, and you're a little sideways, and you're trying to recover, and you get around the corner, and you're going, you messed up, right? And even some young drivers, the instructors go, they even do this, both hands on the helmet. They go, don't let go of the steering wheel. Not until you meet the Hakkinen or Nigel Mansell. Keep, it's hilarious, some of that stuff. And you're thinking all the way down the next straight, how you messed up. You're not preparing yourself for the next corner. You get to the next corner, chances are you're going to mess your braking up, you're going to mess your gear change up, right? The lesson was, it's history. You will never get it back. Forget it, move forward. And I suddenly realized playing is exactly the same thing. You messed up. Don't let the rest of the song suffer because you're still thinking about it. Time, you will never get it back. It's history. So use that concept. So that was a classic point. What I learned in motor racing, which you have to learn very quickly, is it's history, it's gone, don't do it again. And I applied that to playing music ever since. So I was actually racing properly in 1990. Really from that time on, so we make a mistake. So what? We're professional musicians, we fix it. And if you talk to a lot of sportsmen, professional sportsmen, they'll say exactly the same thing. So don't pontificate, don't ponder on something that's using the wrong energy. Just let it go and learn from it. You know, I do. This is very much like that conceptually. It's very similar. You know, you can't get hurt on a drum kit. Well, actually, you can. I've hit myself with a drumstick. Yeah, it's occasionally like hitting ow, you know, or something like that. In a racing car, you can hurt yourself. So a little bit different, but the concept is exactly the same. Actually, you know, any sport, actually, you know, tennis, there's mistakes all the time. You know, the art is playing around the mistake. That's what the art is.
All right, so I'm going to give you a pick between these two, which is what took you from a beginner musician to an intermediate musician, or from an intermediate musician to an advanced musician?
Experience of playing. That's really what it is. Again, you learn every time you play. And the same thing, you make a mistake, you learn from it. So the more experience you have, that's where the beginner becomes the intermediate musician, and I'm still learning today, you know, about how to playing certain things, the way I should play something, especially when you get to play it every night on a tour. And then eventually that becomes from intermediate to, you know, fully professional musician, you know.
And then who is a drummer you look up to?
Oh gosh, so many. Like I say, I've stolen from everybody. So I would say during as I'm kind of growing and my musical tastes developing, I was brought up with big bands, jazz, swing. So obviously Buddy Rich, major influence, as well as Louis Bellson, but as well as many other drummers. I mean, you know, Sonny Payne with Basie. Oh boy, trying to think. Then I started getting into drummers like Ralph Humphreys, and John Van Olden with Stan Kenton, and then Peter Erskine, and then the rock drummers, the bands I got into, Chicago, Danny Serafin, who I think is a very underrated drummer. His playing on those albums, so musical. All the parts he would come up with, absolutely. I used to play along to those records ad nauseum. I mean, anytime a Chicago record came out, I bought it straight away. Loved it. Blood, Sweat and Tears, Bobby Colomby. And then one day there was a single by an artist called Umir Deodato, a Brazilian piano player. And it was a Creed Taylor album. And what it was the theme to 2001, which is Also Sprach Zarathustra. He did as kind of like a fusion-y, kind of funky version, right? And I listened to it on the radio and I went, wow, that's great. I got to go out and get this single. So I was still at school. I think I walked back from school and went to the record store. They had run out, they'd sold out of the single, but they had the album. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get the album. So I bought the album. I didn't know what the other music was like. And so in those days, I would put a record on and I'd listen to it once. And then I'd put it on again, turn the volume up, get on my drums and play to it. So I was pretty quick at picking up tunes, even at that stage. I was already playing with my dad anyway. So, right at the beginning of so the singles are always edited down from the original track. But this was the full-length track. And right at the beginning, there's this real fast, what I thought was a single-stroke roll. And I'm going, whoa, hang on a minute. Who is this guy? That's really fast. And then the groove came in, and that's why I bought the record, because the groove, the bass and the drums. Well, of course, it's Stanley Clarke on bass. It's also Ron Carter on bass playing upright at a part of the song, and the drummer is Billy Cobham. I got off the drums, I picked up the record cover, and I went, "Who's Billy Cobham? Who's that?" I went, whoa. And then the piano player from my dad's band, he used to introduce me to all these new records. He introduced me to Chick Corea, and one of the records he introduced me to was Mahavishnu, In a Mountain Flame. Billy Cobham. I went, oh boy, who is this guy, And I started to try to play along to those records, and I go, whoa, this is tricky stuff. He's amazing, So that's where Billy became like, from Buddy Rich as like one of my main players to follow. It became Billy. And then with Billy was Lenny White, who played with Toto Forever. Beautiful.
Yeah, great drummer.
Oh,
great drummer. I love his playing on the Jocko's solo record. He plays a bunch of tunes on, and they're so good.
Oh, Lenny. And I was in a band, we were supporting ELO in 1975, and we played Exeter University, and guess who our support band was? Well, support for ELO was Return to Forever. So we were the band playing at the end of the night after everybody'd left. So nobody knew who we were. So I got to sit right behind Lenny, and I got to watch Return to Forever. And I was already way into them by that time. And he was another drummer that played lefty. I'd already seen Billy at the Rainbow in London, 1974, and he came out playing lefty. I went, that's how I want to play. I'm going to learn. I'm going to change my whole drumming style and play left-handed. But the other thing I learned from watching Return to Forever was not just watching Lenny, but watching everybody else and watching Chick. I was behind Lenny, so I could see right over to Chick. And what I was amazed at was Chick never looked at his hands. He was always looking at the band. And I went, what a great concept that is. I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn to look at everybody in the band, not me. And I've stuck to that concept ever since. As amazing you see a band play, and the drummer's like, guitar, they're not looking at each other. Communicate, look at each other, So I play, I'm always looking around, unless I'm doing a solo, then I'm close my eyes and just wave my arms about, about to hit something. So that was a very big impression, actually, Lenny. Steve Gadd, of course. So Harvey Mason was a huge influence when I started, doing sessions, like a lot of sessions. I wanted to listen to how these guys were playing their sessions and copy some of the grooves they were playing and take them along to the session I was playing, which I think really helped me get through those sessions and kind of inject some different things into some of these songs, So there's Gadd, Harvey, Bernard Purdy, Richie Hayward. I mean, then that's when it just started doing this. And I started listening to all these different bands, Little Feat, Ziggy Modelis, Dr. John. I was way into that stuff. Loved that music, that New Orleans groove, And then, of course, there's the British rock drummers. Let's not forget those. Ian Pace, one of my favorite British rock drummers. Cozy Powell. Dave Mattox, who used to do a lot of sessions. I'm sure I'm leaving out people. John Heisman, Colosseum, used to listen to him a lot. Gosh, you know, then it starts getting all these different players, which you learn from, you know, and then we start getting to the younger guys. You know, there's Stuart Copeland comes along with the Police. I hadn't heard him in Curved Air, but certainly heard him with Police, who introduced a whole new style of playing, which was fantastic. Chambers, Dennis Chambers, of course, you know, absolutely stunning. Michael Shreve with Santana, Barrymore Barlow with Jethro Tull. You know, I saw Jethro Tull in 1973, a Passion playing. Barry was amazing. You know, so there's all these, so many players. Carmine Appy's played.
Yeah. I was just listening to Vanilla Fudge before I got on the call
really?
with you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great,
I love
great
Carmine.
stuff.
I love Carmine. He's a lovely man. Known him for a long time now. And you know, there's so many different players. It's hard to recall, you know, all of them. But I would say, yeah, anybody who plays well is always going to be an influence, and a pleasure to hear and watch, and you know, yeah.
Yeah, I love how I was asking for one, you gave me about 20 there. All right, and the last question of the interview: what do people get wrong about being a musician?
The reason for being a musician in the first place.
Which is?
Making a lot of money. Becoming a rock star. I think that's, there's, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I'll just learn 3 or 4 chords and, you know, have a hit. And yeah, I mean, that was never, sure, we all like to be successful in what we do, but that was never the reason for me to become a musician. I had no choice. I just wanted to play music, and I wanted to play the drum kit. I would have loved to have become proficient on other instruments. I wish I had spent more time playing piano. I did try to learn guitar back when I was 17, but you know, I don't know, just didn't have the time to do it because I was so busy. Became busy at a very young age, so I was never able to go to school in terms of like music school. We didn't have any in England. We had the Royal College of Music. Drums is not a musical instrument.
What? Wait, what? How did that happen?
According to them, yeah, you had to play like 2 instruments, piano and trombone, or you could play tune percussion. But I was already working. I didn't have time to go to school, so, which was great. Being on records at 16 and 17, and probably the youngest session musician to this day in London, ever, maybe, I don't know. But, you know, as with everything, there's a downside. I didn't get a musical education. I would love to have studied music and known what the hell I was doing, but I don't. I do it all by ear. And, you know, I own keyboards. I don't play them. Hit a few notes, you know, and enough to get it into a sequencer. I used to play better piano back before we had a sequencer. I could actually play a thing all the way through, you know. Now, because there's no technique at all, it's gone.
Now you split the hands up and you start messing around. Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, thank you so much, Simon, for coming on the Rhinestone podcast. I had a really great time. I mean, it's so awesome to get to talk to a musician of your caliber, and I learned so much, and it was just great hearing you break down all sorts of stuff and different topics. Simon, the floor is yours to promote anything you are working on.
Sorry, say again?
So the floor is yours to promote anything that you've got coming out or that you're working on or anything along.
Yeah, well, actually, the main thing I'm promoting at the moment is the Darwin album that just came out, 5 Steps on the Sun. It's only been released a couple of months now. It's doing fairly well. People have told me that they really love the album. They think this is, you know, the music's great and everything. So I'm encouraging people to go out and listen to it. We're not yet at the stage to do any live performance work, but we probably will do. Might take a a year or two to get to that stage, but we want to do it. I'm actually working on. We've got 2 more albums after that album, which are basically albums number 5 and number 6. We just finished tracking, doing the basic tracks for number 6, and I'm currently right now mixing a number 5. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 mixes done. So I'm on the 5th mix now, which I'm starting. I'm going to take today off. I've been stuck in here this whole week. That's really my main thing that I'm doing right now.
Well, again, Simon, thank you so much for coming on the Rhinestone podcast. I really appreciate your time. And until next time, my friend.
Wonderful. Thanks, Banner. Really enjoyed it.